He came through that doorway like a hurricane tearing through a quiet shore, his breath ragged, his voice an eruption of fury that shook the walls. His eyes, wet with rage and betrayal, locked on the two people in the room as if they were enemies on a battlefield. This wasn't illness, he shouted, his tone cutting like broken glass. This was sabotage, and I know every detail. For years, the woman they all knew as a towering voice of gospel, a beacon of faith and strength, had been crumbling before the world's eyes. Her body, once commanding every stage it graced, began to falter. Her voice, which had once soared like it could break the sky, now came out strained, hesitant. Her thoughts became clouded, her once sharp mind slipping into a fog she couldn't explain. To the public, it was called exhaustion, stress, overwork, but the truth was a poison far more deliberate. According to David Jr., it was no accident. It was an orchestrated plan. He accused his own father, David Sr., and the family's trusted physician, Dr. Jackie, of plotting to dismantle his mother piece by piece. They weren't healing her. They were feeding her toxins under the guise of treatment, stripping away her strength, her clarity, her fire. The goal wasn't care, it was control. Control over her estate, control over her royalties, control over a legacy that had taken decades to build. And now the son had returned with proof, thick stacks of medical reports, hidden voice recordings, altered prescriptions, and records of suspicious bank transfers. His voice broke with the weight of his words. This wasn't neglect, this wasn't a mistake. This was an attempt on her life for money. Arrest warrants were already in motion, the pair taken into custody within hours, and the gospel community was left in a whirlwind. The marriage everyone thought was picture perfect had shattered into a story of betrayal written in blood ties. Standing there, David Jr. made it clear to anyone listening he didn't care if it meant taking down his own father. You don't drug and destroy the woman who gave you life. Not while I'm here. For weeks, David Jr. had watched in silence as his mother's health decayed in ways that made no sense. He had stood by, hoping it was temporary, convincing himself that maybe it was age or illness. But the truth became undeniable, and when it did, it burned in him until it erupted. He stormed through the front door like a man possessed, the sound of the slam rattling frames on the walls. His chest heaved, his eyes burned, the anger in his voice could have split steel. Enough. On the couch, his mother lay pale and frail, her head barely lifting to see him. Beside her, Dr. Jackie wore a mask of gentle concern, pretending to monitor her pulse, murmuring reassurances like a snake whispering in grass. And from the hallway came David Sr., casual in appearance but tight in his movements. David Jr.'s finger pointed at them like the barrel of a gun. I know what you've done. I know you've been poisoning her for money. The words landed like a thunderclap. Dr. Jackie's lips twitched, David Sr.'s face drained of all color. Then, David Jr. stepped forward and dropped the evidence between them. A manila folder exploding open, spilling lab results, pharmacy logs, and wire transfers across the floor. These drugs were never prescribed for her needs. Sedatives, narcotics, poisons disguised as medicine. You were shutting her down, making her forget, making her easier to control. Tamila tried to speak, but her voice came out as a faint rasp. David Jr. knelt beside her, taking her hand in a grip that was both gentle and desperate. Mom, they were killing you in slow motion. He rose again, fury swelling, and his father finally spoke, loud and sharp. She couldn't manage herself anymore, he argued. She was falling apart and needed someone to take control. Control? David Jr. stepped into his father's space until they were face to face. You mean access? Access to her accounts, her career, her worth? You didn't protect her, you drained her. And you, he said, turning to Dr. Jackie, you enabled every bit of this. Doctor, Jackie stood, smoothing her coat as if dignity could still be salvaged. You don't understand what she needed. Help? David Jr. barked a bitter laugh. Is that what you call dosing a legend into near coma? He picked up a small, unmarked bottle from the coffee table and held it up. What is this? Because a lab says it's a banned sedative not approved for humans, and you were giving it to her 3 times a day. Jackie froze. David Jr. let the bottle fall to the ground, glass shattering across hardwood. His mother's tears ran silently, her shoulders trembling. Every day she forgot more of herself. The woman who built her life on faith and music reduced to a shadow, and I let it happen because I wanted to believe you both." He turned on his father, voice shaking. The house felt different once the sirens faded into the distance, though the quiet was heavy and restless. David Jr. stood in the middle of the living room, chest still rising fast from adrenaline, eyes fixed on the door his father and Dr. Jackie had just been dragged through. His mother lay on the couch, a blanket pulled over her thin frame, her breathing shallow but steady. He knelt beside her again, brushing back strands of hair from her damp forehead. "You're safe now, Mama." She blinked slowly, her lips trembling, and in a voice barely louder than a whisper, asked, "Where's David?" He froze, unsure if she meant him or the man who had just been cuffed. "Which one?" he asked carefully. Her eyes hardened with sudden clarity. "The one who promised to love me. The one who stood in front of God and said he'd never let me walk through a fire alone, but poured gasoline instead." Her words cracked something inside him. Years of manipulation, guilt, and false care had been wrapped around her like chains, and now piece by piece they were snapping. Her voice, though weak, grew sharper with every sentence. "He told me I was forgetful, said I was too tired to handle my contracts, my music, my business. He said I didn't need to worry because he'd take care of it all. But he didn't take care of me. He took from me my voice, my songs, my freedom." David Jr. gripped her hand tighter, his jaw clenching with resolve. "You're not fading anymore, Mama. Not while I'm here. We've got court in 2 days, and I'm bringing everything. Witnesses, recordings, nurses who saw what they did. Even your assistant is ready to testify about the days she caught Dad slipping pills into your smoothies." Her eyes widened. "He drugged me." His nod was slow but unflinching, and Jackie signed every prescription under a fake diagnosis. Early onset dementia. That's why they locked you out of your studio. That's why they kept telling you you'd forgotten lyrics. That's why your album never released. Her hand flew to her chest like she'd been struck, her breath catching in disbelief. They were trying to erase me. David Jr. leaned in, voice low but fierce. "And they almost did. But we're going to make sure they never touch you again." Slowly, she reached toward the nightstand beside her bed and pulled out a small, worn notebook. Her hands shook as she pressed it into his palms. "I wrote it all down. Every time something felt wrong. Every time he told me I was imagining things. Every time she handed me pills without labels." David opened it and began scanning the pages. His eyes narrowed with every word. Dates, times, symptoms, moments she blacked out, faces she remembered seeing but didn't understand why. This wasn't just a diary. This was ammunition. He shut the book carefully, his voice shaking. "You just gave me the last nail in their coffin." A sudden noise drew his attention, a knock at the door, rapid and impatient. He stepped to the window and saw what he feared. Not police this time, but cameras, microphones, reporters packed like a swarm, news trucks crowding the curb. He turned to her. "They want a statement." She straightened her shoulders despite her weakness. "Then give them one." He hesitated, studying her face. She met his eyes with steel. "I've been quiet long enough." An hour later, the living room had been transformed into an impromptu press conference. The soft light of the setting sun streamed through the blinds, falling across her face. She wore a deep blue turban, her makeup subtle, her expression unshakable. David Jr. sat beside her, his hand wrapped around hers like an anchor. The lead reporter leaned forward. "Miss Mann, the world is watching. They want to know, did your husband try to poison you?" Without a flicker of doubt, she answered, "My husband and Dr. Jackie conspired to silence me for control and money. They tried to convince me my mind was failing, that my career was over. But they made one mistake. They underestimated my son." David Jr. swallowed hard, tears threatening. She squeezed his hand. "I am alive because my son refused to let me die in silence." The reporter's voice softened. "What do you want to happen now?" Tamila's gaze cut directly into the camera lens, her voice ringing with the authority that once commanded stadiums. "I want justice. For every woman whose voice was stolen behind closed doors. For every mother gaslit into believing she was crazy. For every artist stripped of her work by the people she trusted most. I want my name back, my music, my peace. And I want the man who vowed to protect me to face every consequence the law allows." Within minutes, the clip exploded online. Hashtags multiplied. Justice for Tamila, Her Voice Matters, Unbreakable. Church leaders posted statements. Gospel stars offered public support. Record labels reached out to re-release her shelved album. But none of it changed what was coming, the trial. 2 days later, the courthouse was surrounded by onlookers and media crews.